All right, you guys, let's go get into the muck and get the dirt under your fingernails and be that one little creepy bite of food that has a couple grains. And you know what I'm talking about? That's what this class is like. It's a bite of food that has some dirt, some sand in it. Let's get dirty. Hi there, guys. This is Aaron Draplin. I'm a graphic designer here in Portland, Oregon. And this is our 7th Skillshare class, and we're calling this one Crusty Techniques, Getting Dirty with the DDC. So I should really kind of tell you what I mean by crusty design. You know, crusty design is where you take the edge off of everything, right? And that might be through a couple Photoshop techniques or by going out and getting weird on some cement or something, but you know, you're quite literally taking the edges off things, and you're sort of like allowing those accidents of how ink reacts to each other and kind of schmutzes out, we'll just say. Those are good things. And too many times on the computer, you just don't see that stuff. So you have to go kind of, you know, be proactive and go and damage it. And if you do it the right way, it can have a really nice feel. So in this class, it's all about getting dirty. We're gonna go back and kind of fumble through sort of the design history of how they used to make things before the computer. I'm going to show you some of my heroes, talk about how to collect inspiration. But what we're going to teach you is how to kind of build those crusty techniques into your quiver. Each one of those arrows that you understand how to use in a certain way just to damage things, to add a little bit of grit, and a little bit of grain, a little bit of scrizz, as I say. All right, you guys, let's get into it. All right, you guys, a little bit of a production disclaimer here. Listen, we are in a pandemic. Things are raging along. We're locked down. We're doing all this stuff virtual. So I need you guys to have just a little bit of leeway. You're gonna see some weird production techniques. I'm gonna go rogue and use my iPhone, and I don't even know what a jump cut is. But these things are gonna be happening in this thing. And the idea is this. I'm in Portland, they're in New York City, and you guys are all spread out across the world. So just have fun with this. And this is in the spirit of being dirty, getting a little crusty. All right? Whoa. That's not gonna work. Watch. So let's talk a little bit about the history of graphic design. And this is gonna be pretty rough and pretty scrizzy in its own right. The main things I want you to think about. When you look at a magazine let's just say 1982 or something, or 85, they were building that, pasting up all those things. What you were doing was you were using the machine to print out these pages and then cutting into things to crop them, right? You would literally paste that onto the page along with your type and your rules and your lines, and that was called a paste-up mechanical, I think is the proper term. The photos were used doing halftones. The photos were used, I don't even know, these big photostat cameras. Here's the thing, a lot more steps. I mean, when you go all the way back to the dawn of just even printing, and you work your way up, I don't know, into the mid 1860s, around the Civil War, we'll just say, and people were using wood type on these big trays, and then of course they would ink them, and they would put a piece of paper on that thing, and a big roller would come and hit it. Every time they put that piece of type into that big tray and inked it, every impression was a little bit different, right? From poster to poster to poster. And then every time that you would put that thing back into to dry, and they would clean it off and stuff and put that back into its home to where it would go, you know, it would take some of the stuff from before. But what you were doing is it was just a constantly changing sort of degradation process. That's so charming to me. I mean, if you're a little kid, if you can remember Lego boxes, and you can remember, you know, I'm dating myself here, Cabbage Patch Kid boxes, and just whatever we had, Star Wars, Millennium Falcon boxes, those things were built using images and type pasted up onto some sort of large page, and then it was sort of picked apart. Take a look at how this thing looks. I mean, the cover has these big grainy photos, and the sides and the back has this almost photocopy looking flexo print kind of quality to it, where the ink is simply hitting the substrate of the cardboard, the sort of naked cardboard of the box, and everything just looks a little crusty, and there's just such a beautiful charm to this old packaging that I try to emulate when I'm making things, at least sometimes. It's one more arrow in my quiver that I can use if I want to go really, really clean, or I want to go just a little bit crusty. It comes from my love of this old box. I would hope today that you would just sort of be comfortable with a couple of these things that we're going to talk about, of ways to quickly add that to a design of yours. So at all times, I want you guys to have a respect for where this stuff came from. I want you to have a respect for the privilege that you have just on your screen with all the software. We are so lucky to have all this at our fingertips. A million typefaces, a million possibilities. And yet, when you start to boil those things down and you sort of put a set of restraints on how you make things, some really magical stuff can happen. And we're going to see that happen today. So this little section, it's sort of my heroes, right? And when I got into graphic design, in the mid 90s, and you saw where, there was this sort of wave of, we'll just say, frivolous, trendy trashing of design. And what it was taking the digital realm as far as you could go, and they were damaging type, and they were making things illegible for some sort of artistic sort of statement and stuff. Listen, I understand it was all exciting and it was cool, and yet the things that really attracted me from that era, it was the Charles Spencer Anderson CSA design out of Minneapolis. It was House Industries out of Delaware. And I was watching these guys make moves, and yes, some of it was goopy, was shtick, and sort of a very, very distinct style. But it was a reaction against sort of all this sort of weird, puked out, choked on, phlegmy looking graphic design that was kind of the hot at the time, right? There were people reacting against that, and one of them that kept coming up was a guy named Art Chantry. I put him in the heroic crust category. And Art was this graphic designer who had a number of years on me at that time, back in, I'd say, the early 90s, when I was just a 22-year-old kid. Art was already very established in the Seattle scene, making rock and roll posters and album covers and all kinds of stuff before that. He was using these traditional paste-up sort of ways of making that he still uses today. And yet he had set himself so far apart from so many other people by exploiting that stuff in such creative ways that, to this day, I'm still trying to figure out certain posters that he made. If you go into contemporary crust, at least in rock and roll, Jeff Kleinsmith from Sub Pop was always inspiring. I would buy records simply because of the graphics. And I just love this stuff. I love the wit and the form, having something really loud and damaged and big, and then just a tiny little bit of type to kind of bring it all in. And then that led into the 2000s, and I discovered Aesthetic Apparatus out of Minneapolis. And these guys were sort of my age, and they were making rock and roll posters and record covers, and they were a couple of these kind of, we'll just say Wisconsin sort of knuckleheads that I could really relate to, and the work was incredible. These guys were using found imagery and damaging things, blowing things up, blowing things down, and then when you would take it and just isolate those couple images with a couple of really simple forms, there was some magical stuff happening. All right, moving right along in the crust category, but we'll call this one Portland crust, right? And here is one of my latest kits from my friend Kate Bingaman-Burt, and every year, we get these little holiday kits and stuff, and it's just it's just loaded up with all these awesome, sort of little daily purchase drawings and things and stuff, and all on this goopy sort of risograph printing with fluorescent inks and stuff. And there's just so many little accents. Some things are really clear, some things aren't kind of clear. I just love her work, and I just love this sort of, sort of the humor and the sort of humanity in it. Kate works for all sorts of big things too, but my favorite stuff are the things that she makes that you kind of can't tell how she produced it. I have a feeling it was ink on paper, and then she took a photo of that and put it into the machine and then built it into a layout. It's just a reminder of the charm of when things go a little astray, Another Portland friend I like to talk about is my buddy Jason Sturgill. If you go follow him at his Instagram, you can just see this kind of humanity, we'll just say. This kind of empathy for form and empathy for language. You can see this sort of graphic vulnerability and how he talks about it. But what I want you to really hone in on is how he makes the forms he makes. I don't know how he does it. If he's using a crayon on a piece of wood and then scanning that stuff in, awesome. But I can never tell. And if I found out it might be on an iPad, that's what we're trying to get here, is he's doing this stuff. He's tricking me, and he's got this certain grain and this certain sort of crust to all of his forms. It's always got just this little bit of off-registered quality. That's a decision that he's making to pull it away from the digital. And I just like that. It's kind of like him. There's just something about him that you can never quite put your finger on. And the third Portland buddy is my buddy Brett Stenson. The work that he's making, you will not find a right angle anywhere in the type, in the images. He'll just take the extra step to add just a little bit of texture because, I mean, not only is he making art and vectors and forms and things, but he's also carving stuff, right? And you can see that same kind of charm in his work. I love geometric rigidity. I love that stuff. The thick lines, and you've heard me blather on and on and on, and that's what vectors allow you to do. But he's using those same tools, and yet there's just this overall sense of a looseness that's just so beautiful to me. And finally, just for a bit of a wild card, his name is Jason Philippow out of Los Angeles. This thing is called the P1 brand, and it's everything from skating curbs to skateboarding, stake doorbin, rock and roll, punk rockery, things that matter to late 40s people like myself. So go check out P1 brand, look at dig in to that monotone quality and dig into that awesome, crusty little halftone quality that has that stuff. Because listen, you can still read it, but there's a certain charm, like it's just been photocopied 1,000 times or reproduced, 666 times, and then that's what you get to see every day from him. So I just appreciate that. These are my heroes, right? The heroes of our chantry, sort of contemporary people that kind of, when I was getting into this stuff, who I was looking at, friends here in Portland, and then a buddy who's always skating curbs down in Los Angeles, Jason there. These are people that I'm looking at every day to remind me that inserting a little bit of crust is okay. And they just, continue to inspire me. Let's get into some crusty inspiration. The first thing I want to talk about are these old, coverless popular mechanics. I mean, this one doesn't even come with a cover. Somewhere along the way, But check it out. You can go on eBay and get, just get one of these from, this one's from 1953. But I'll just flip it over and you can see incredible stuff on here. These little ads and little things. And everything was sort of black and white. But if you go on eBay and you get one of these from 1953 for a couple bucks, and what you're going to find inside this, I mean, just these crusty photos and layouts. And remember, all this stuff was built using paste ups and big halftone shots and things. These little companies, this was the way they were selling you, I don't know, what is this? A modern lawnmower sharpener. Ugh. Now check it out. That ad, the next magazine, if they were going to run it again, would just be pasted up again. And every time they did that, every time I took a photo of that thing and then reproduced it, it got a little bit crustier, right? Here I am going through the decades, right? I'm going through the decades. I get into the sort of 60s, we'll just say. And this is how they would sell you, Gart Brothers would sell you a tent. You can take a look here. The brightest thing you see is the tent and the price and all the secondary data. Listen, this stuff, this page right here is so inspiring to me. When you get inside here, you can see there's little order forms and stuff. And every one of these things just has a certain sort of patina to it. Like it's just been copied 100 times, and every time it just lost a little bit of something. You can still read it, but the reason being is because every little piece inside this thing, every little section was laid out by hand. It was placed in there by hand. Every piece of type was set into that thing and then pushed around to make that little piece and then somehow dropped in there, right? And there's just a certain charm to that. And what you'll see printing mistakes and errors. Now we get up here into the 70s and things get a little dicey, we'll just say. Now there's a lot of stuff I can't show in here, but this is a hot rod magazine all about vans and things and stuff. And, we're getting into the 70s, a lot of hair, a lot of macrame, a lot of weird polyesters and things. But it's the same sort of quality, the way that these guys were selling, knives and mag wheels and stuff. And finally, some of my favorites from my archive are these little golden nature guidebooks, right? And these things just come with everything. First of all, we're going to talk about this today because really it's about how to distribute information, right? And sort of a certain look and feel. And with a couple limited options, these guys were able to tell stories about leaves and space and science and rocks. And we're talking with like 2 typefaces, maybe in Futura bold, and then like a little bit of Futura sort of book or heavy. These crusty little photos, half toned out, and then a couple simple illustrations. And they had the entire world in these little things for kids to learn about, right? For little Aaron Draplin to learn about when, he was 6 or 7 years old. And these were sort of left over from the early 60s and 50s and stuff. Listen, go and grab a couple of these off your Etsy's or eBay's or whatever. Really study the crusty quality of how that ink hits this newsprint paper. Because the moment that little dot hits that thing, it just kind of expands. It's called dot gain, right? That's something you worry about printing when you're doing, printing onto newsprint, right? Really study that. Because what we're trying to do today is make those things accessible to you if that's what's appropriate for your design. And remember, if you're not into buying it, you can also find, I call it sort of my uncle archive. Some uncle somewhere scanned in every one of these. They used to have them on Flickr and stuff, but as a way to collect inspiration. Some uncle did not understand that if you scan in at 7,000 DPI, that means we get to use it, right? When you go back into the decades, you see things that are problematic, you see things that are weird, you see things that have gotten better over the years. And here's the thing, this isn't for everything. If you understand how they produce this stuff, you can go apply that to your work in the most amazing ways, right? So we're gonna show you that today. I wanna show you guys a bunch of stuff that I've made over the years, making this one flat image that's just sort of damaged in the end, right? Or worn with some wear and tear and some tooth, right? So here's a little gallery of my crusty techniques over the years with some greatest hits, a bunch of misses, and dirty the whole time. Okay, so we need a little bit of content to go scriz out, but I don't quite have a piece yet, so we'll just watch along. I'm gonna go build this piece out right now, and then we'll have something to start damaging. Buckle up. Okay, thanks for hanging in there and watching that little time lapse. Now we've got something to play with. Now what this technique is, think of it sort of like an in-app copy machine, right? If you went down to the Kinko's, down to your local copy shop or something, you took this graphic, printed out on a piece of black and white toner, paper, and you put that inside the copy machine, and then you copied it a couple times, and each time it spit those things out, you would put that back into the sort of copy window thing and took copies of that. Each time you're degrading it a little bit, right? Now, if you blow it up and you zoom in and then you shrink it back down and then you blow it back up, every time you do that, you're just degrading that next copy because it spits one out, you put it back into the window, hit it again. And if you go up and down a number of times, here's the thing, we don't have a copy machine here, so you're gonna do it with your Photoshop, all right? So the first thing you can kind of do, I'm gonna start with a new window, and it's going to bring over that vector that you had copied out of your Illustrator document into this. Okay, so paste it in, Command V. It's going to be placed as a smart object up above a blank white background. Okay, so now on these, all you really need to do is go, grayscale. So go to your grayscale, don't flatten it, don't rasterize it, because now that thing is just floating above. Now, if you go check the size of this thing, just quickly go in there and right now it's at 72 DPI. The reason it goes in at 72 DPI is it kind of protects you, right? You don't want to be dragging around too big of things and placing them into a document. So since you're starting a new document, they just start at the sort of default 72 DPI, kind of web-based, but you're going to want to bring that thing up. In this case, we'll just go to a quick 777 DPI, okay? So now what that means is when you take a look at this thing, it is super, super crisp inside there because that is a 777 DPI vector smart object up against a white background. Now let's give it a little bit of breathing room, go into your canvas size, and we're gonna go from 5.1 to 6, and we're gonna go from 7.3 to just 8, okay? So it gives it just a little bit of breathing room. So you can see this now, you've got this extra little space. So now what I want you to do is I want you to go and take those first two layers, and I want you to go Command J, and that's going to make a new layer of each, and then Command E and flatten the two. This is a copy to play with, right? Now do it again, Command J. Now you've got a layer up above the original vector piece, and then your original white background. So what you can do, you can blur everything out. So I'm going to go into my Gaussian blur, and you can see here, Gaussian blur, and then just give it a real simple round number like 6 pixels. You can still read it. It still looks good. Now watch, if we go up to 40 pixels, you can't see it anymore. But let's just stick with 6 pixels. And now zoom in and look at the type. You see how it goes from a dark value all the way down to a white value right here. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go Command L to your levels, and then you're simply just gonna bring in that black point, and you're gonna bring up that white point, and see what you're doing there? You're just smoothing off all those edges. Now, if you click out Command minus a couple times, you can see exactly what you're controlling here to smooth those edges out, right? So if you bring it in, if you want to be even crustier, cool, whatever, or just a little tiny bit, you have control here, right? So look at this. Even just right there, that just took the edge off just that quick. It feels like it's been copied a number of times, but you know, you have to be careful because you'll start to lose things. So remember, that was just a copy. So we're gonna call that one Gaussian blur, then levels, and high contrast, okay? So now remember, we made that copy down below. Let's do it again. So Command J, and now what I want you to do is I want you to go add some noise. So you're gonna go add some noise to this thing. You wanna make sure you're on Gaussian blur, and let's just go to something like, you know, 100%, somewhere around there at this 777 dpi. Now, if you notice, when you zoom in, you just added a bunch of little pixels or noise. So what you need to do now is you just need to go and simply blur everything just a little bit. We'll zoom in. Now simply blur everything just a little bit, the Gaussian blur. Now just a little bit. So let's just go like 2 pixels. Because what you did there is now it's not necessarily little hard-edged little pixels. It blurred everything out, so it's just sort of a texture now. Zoom back out. Now Command L, go into your levels, bring up the white point, bring down the black point, and you can start to see these little scrizzy little pieces coming out of this. See these right here? These little specks and little flicks and flacks and stuff. Now, if you bring that black point down, you can get a whole bunch of those things. See what's happening there? So you kind of have to play with this, but what you just did right there was we just started to add a little bit of crust to everything just that quick. We're going to call this one Add Noise, then Gaussian Blur, the whole layer, and then using your levels, get the contrast super high by making it black and white. So you can turn that one off and then do it again, because remember, we just have a copy again. Let's do another copy, Command J. Let's try this one and get a little weird with it. So, okay, to review, we're gonna go add a little bit of noise. We're gonna go real quick. Add a little bit of noise. Now let's just take it and let's do a little bit less or something. We'll just say, there it is, that looks cool. Zoom in, blur it out a smidge. Now, come back to the start of this thing. Command 0 brings you back out to the full document. Command L, bring up your white point, bring down your black point. You can start to see all those little bits and bobs and little pieces. Now, this is where you can start to experiment, right? Remember, if you want it real chunky and crusty, let's try it like that first. Okay, now you're gonna go into your filters gallery. You're gonna go find one called Stamp. Okay, there it is. Now, see what it's doing right here? It's giving it this, like you can see here, you can go really, really light, and you can smooth things out. And what that does is instantly, just that quick, it looks like we went through and ran it through a copy machine 40 times. So we'll leave that one right there. Now you can still read that, right? You can still read that, but look at how those letters are all just a little bit janky. So we're gonna call this one Filter Gallery Stamp. And now watch, if you use that thing again, make another version of that layer, we're gonna go to that filter gallery, into the stamp again. It's smoothing it out yet again, right? You're just like degrading this thing. And see how this right now is like getting almost too smooth to where you can't even read it? There is gonna be a threshold where it gets kind of weird. Now check it out. We'll take it even one step farther. So just let this thing catch up with it. There it is, okay? And now, go in yet again. Like, look at this little bit of noise and stuff happening up in the corner here. I don't know where that came from, but it's off-centered. It's just because it's picking up a little bit more over there. Now, if you do it one more time, Command J, and watch this. Get weird with it. Blur it out, Gaussian blur. Now, take it out pretty far to where it's like, let's just say something like 19 or 20 points, right? Okay, now bring up your levels. Bring in that white point, bring down that black point, and it's starting to become like illegible. But just take a look at how cool that is. That's our patented sort of Skriz technique, using a little bit of noise, a little bit of blur, a little bit of noise, a little bit of blur, back and forth, using that stamp inside the filter gallery to really smooth everything out. Now, one more quick one here to show you. Inside there, think of it like a copy machine, right? What does a copy machine do? It takes copies of your document, it spits it out, you put it back into the window, you keep doing that a bunch of times, you'll degrade it, right? Let's go get one of our originals. There it is. Now watch what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take this thing. This is a big no-no in Photoshop, but that's why this is fun, right? We're going to go and take a Command T. Command T is the transform. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm just going to simply bring it down to about 20-25%, okay? Hit Enter. Now watch what I'm going to do. Command T and bring it back up. Now what happened right there, just that quick, you added a little bit of Skriz to it. Now do it again. Command T. Every time you're doing this, you're basically blurring these things out. So just a little bit, you're losing that tooth. Bring it down pretty small. Let's say 15%. There it is. And bring it back up. Now zoom in. Now see what's happening there? You're starting to get these weird little edges. Now if you just go and mess with your levels a little bit, you bring in your black, you bring in your white, and you're starting to smooth stuff out naturally by just messing with the pixels. So I'm just going to do this a number of times, just really, challenge it. And after a while with just doing that, when you zoom in, hit your levels, bring it in dirty, bring it in, bring up your white point, bring in your black point, and you're going to start to get this weird, smoothed out kind of quality. You can still read the stuff, but there, in just those couple quick maneuvers, you're treating your machine like a copy machine. And listen, when I want that design, that texture, that Instagram post, this little piece of type talking about the Skillshare class, when I want that thing to have just a little bit of a schmutz to it, these are a couple quick ways to do it. So we just did our little Skriz technique, right? What I want us to kind of tune into here is this quality of the human touch, of almost like frailty, or how about this, how fallible we are. And by doing a really simple technique, it's going to illustrate just how much we screw things up and why that's okay, definitely, for this thing here. And here's where this comes from. When you go back and you look at the old techniques of paste up, the way that they used to do things to assemble a piece of typography, there were these things called letraset sheets of press type. And I can show a couple by just going like this. See those right there? Okay, so these old press type sheets, and what you would do is you would lay that over your white sheet of paper or board or whatever, and you would simply burnish it, and that little stickery little piece of whatever it was, letraset, would go onto your page, and then you would build out your piece of type, right? Now I know we can't really do that here in a video, but what we can do is simply this. Now when you look at my document here, now what I want you to do is I want you to grab this piece and drag it over and just make it black real quick. Now I'm going to grab an arrow out of my symbols palette, put it down below, and then what you're going to do here is you're just going to dupe this piece down below. So you've got the proper piece of type in its type line or type window or whatever you want to call it. It's still editable. Now down below here, you just want to go convert it to outlines. Now I do that by hitting Shift Command O. That takes it from being a typeface that you can edit and just makes it simply into shapes. So now if you do this again, make another arrow. Now watch what I'm going to do down below here. You're simply going to rebuild this. So you have to go ungroup it, which is Shift Command G. And now I'm just going to rebuild this down below. Now don't worry about this going perfect. Just rebuild it. So you're just going to take the C. By hitting Option, you can make an extra C, right? And dragging. So if you Option drag this R, there's another one. Now just try to put it together to the best of your ability down below. And don't worry about it totally lining up. Because what you're going to see here is you're going to just go kind of quick and kind of dirty. Is you're going to see the human fallibility of the inability to get it into that perfect exact line. So don't worry about, see that E dipped pretty low, but I kind of dig it. So take the N and put it in there. Don't look at the spacing between this I, it's all gross. And you got the E gets all just janky, and look at, put that S on there, because check it out now. If you take this piece back into your document, So let's go and let's grab that piece, this whole type piece here. And let's take it off to the side so we have a copy of it. And now let's start switching these pieces out. So if you take this thing and you drop it in here and you color it white, now look what that just did. It has this kind of quality of like this kind of playful quality. I mean, you don't want it to be too painful, but the idea is by going and affecting at least the larger headlines and rebuilding these things, you give it this just sort of human error, right? And that's something that a computer will never do. And you know, the idea is every single piece there, you touched it, you owned it, and there might have been some mistakes along the way, and that's okay because that's that human touch coming in there, and that's what we're trying to get. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab this paragraph with our sort of dummy copy. Let's put an arrow underneath it. There's the original piece of type. Let's go convert it to outline, Shift-Command-O. There it goes. So I'm going to pretend here that when we were pasting this thing up, it was sort of word by word, and a couple of them got screwed up. So watch what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go in here and make sure that these are all ungrouped, Shift-Command-G. And I'm going to go in kind of, let's just say kind of every other wordish. And I'm going to do little things like this. I'm just going to kind of twist them and rotate them just a little bit. See what I did there? Historical designs, let's just bring that down a couple points. Don't worry about it. Here's one way I trick myself. I take it out of the thing, and I try to go put it back in quickly. There it is. And it's a little bit janky. So just do this for every 10th word and just go give it a little bit of a kick. Now that you've done every, let's say, 7th or 8th word a little bit, and you've got a couple little errors in here, you can go in even a little more granular and just grab the A here and bring it down a little bit, and maybe a couple letters here. You know, this is up to you. And you know, after a while, it's still going to be legible. But what you're doing is you're just giving it this kind of like randomness. Now bring that thing back into your document. You're voluntarily damaging it, so it just has just a little bit of a human touch. All right, so we just went in and we kind of damaged each piece of type, even, you know, kind of word by word, and we went a little more granular, where we even went like letter by letter, right? But now what I want you to do is, if you think of those old ads in the Popular Mechanics, and you know, from one month it's this size to the next month it's a little bit different size, you can tell they were simply cutting and pasting and building these things into a new format super quick. So what I want you to do is I want you to go in and grab whatever piece you built. Grab that piece and just get it, make another version of it up above. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go try to get that dimension to work within the sort of Skillshare, you know, sort of wide screens. And we're going to call this 1920 pixels, this rectangle, by 1080 pixels. So there it is. I'm going to use this thing as my sort of guide. So I'm going to make this thing, you know, something you can see, and I'm going to lock it. Command-2 locks it. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to rebuild this thing as fast as I can to jam it in here. And it's going to get a little weird because it is a different format. You know, this thing doesn't quite fit across the top, but that's okay, right? Just, you know, kind of go with it. We're going to get the line, and don't worry about everything lining up totally perfect. We just want these things just to go fast and kind of dirty. So check it out. We've got these 8 pieces. I'm going to grab one by one, just getting real weird with it, right? So see, break this one right here using our quiver of Crusty techniques, and then I'm going to go one by one and just see what happens. Because it's starting to look like the back of those old, you know, like horror magazines and stuff, right? Okay, a couple more to go here, a couple more to go. And then check it out. Now grab those things and start to get those things to where they feel about right. Now watch. Of course, I want to stretch that thing over, but maybe there's an opportunity to just go put something weird in there, because this is what they used to do. They used to put jokes in here. So let's just go get a nice big piece of vertical type, and we're just going to use that DDC hardware, and we'll go. Okay, we're going fast, we're going fast. And that filled that space just that quick. Now you can kind of, you know, tune this thing up to fill that space a little bit better. And now just leave it dirty, because here's the thing. We just went from this to this just that fast. Now see all the little errors? Things are getting kind of weird and not quite lining up and things. That's okay. Let it do that. Celebrate that, because that's kind of what it would look like back in the day. It's about getting loose and just getting the job done, we'll say, right? Because if you can get into that loose space, let it go, you're going to see errors happen that are exactly what we're trying to accomplish here, because otherwise it's sort of painful how good we are at this stuff, right? So get bad with it, you guys. So what I want to talk about is, the power of these really simple typefaces. So what I want to do is I want to have like a review on just some of these basic classic typefaces, and just sort of getting into it here. When we jump on the screen, just your basic Futura Bold, and you can see it's just sort of a workhorse. It works incredible, and we'll just call it sort of sentence case or whatever. It's also the best, obviously for our field notes and stuff, and just regular old uppercase. Now, when you get kind of a text weight, Futura Medium is, it goes back to that kind of golden book nature guides. If we were to sort of do a forensic study, you would see it's only 1 or 2 typefaces all the way through, maybe a third one for some of the details in the back. But that would be Futura Bold and then sort of Futura Medium, pretty much all the way through, right? Maybe a couple special things on the cover. They were able to pack in an encyclopedia of knowledge into these tiny little books using this really simple, painful kind of system, right? But with such incredible charm. So, all right, Futura Medium for text. Another workhorse typeface that would be more of just sort of a serif typeface is Century Schoolbook. And that thing looks great just as it is, or even better, to give a little bit of emphasis, to go into the italic version, right? So let me see if I can't find that. And the italic version. Franklin Gothic, the entire family is pretty great, but kind of stick with the standard and the condensed and the extra condensed. But that extra condensed is an incredible headline font. And of course, the classic Rockwell, which is a slab serif. That one works. That, you saw there's other versions of that, Memphis and Stymie, but Rockwell's kind of the one. And if you want to have just an extra little bit of flair, Futura Display. And you can see that here. It's got this weird little kind of angled little quality to the edge, the things. Now, thinking about Crusty typography, there is a sort of look and feel that it lends itself to. But remember, you guys out there, these techniques, they go towards anything that you guys are making, be it a logo, be it whatever. But if you're going to kind of go back and try to get a feel of how to make these old funny ads and stuff, limit yourself to these, just like they did. Because there's a weird harmony within that stuff. It did the job. That's why it looked the way it looked for so many years, as manuals and instruction pamphlets and that kind of stuff. Now, another anachronism you have to watch for, and this is more sort of just kind of computer based, is you have to watch for script fonts that come out of, your typeface, right? So if you jump in here, and I've got this thing blown up into this Skillshare here. Now, what you're going to notice here, and this freaks me out, is those 2 L's, in nature, they would not happen that way. The idea is, if you're going to go through there, and I'm just going to try to be quick here. Let me find my little painting tool. But if you do this thing in nature, and there's an S, and there's a K, and there's an I, and an L, and an L. Look at, see how I went a little bit high right there? And so on. So, the idea is a typeface just wouldn't do that. It's going to have a rhythm. It's going to have this sort of undulating quality from up to down to up to down. So what you have to do, much like we were doing in those first couple lessons, create this thing to outlines, and then just go tweak it a little bit. So this one, I'll bring it over and I'll get it on its axis. There it is. And now go and reset the bounding box. There it is. And let's just make this one a little bit longer. Now, painfully, place it back in there. And see what that just did? That just added this cool rhythm to this thing, where now that L goes a little higher than the one after it and a little bit lower down here. And you can jam back out a little bit and say, all right, maybe there's a chance for these 3 characters to go a little bit lower. And you can go crazy with this. But the idea is, what came out of the default of the typeface is kind of dangerous. That's not the way it would work in the real world. Take a look at this one typeface called Pacifico. You can see here that suddenly that L is the same L as the second L, right? So you have to go through and rebuild it again. Now, get your little arrows to kind of keep track of this stuff so you know what you're doing. Out of the symbols palette there. and I'm gonna go convert this to outlines, and now I'm gonna get weird with it, right? So if you just kind of go in and you look at those two L's, what are some quick things you could do? Well, first things first, we want to make sure that this little thing doesn't line up there, right? Or this little guy comes over here, or you can add little pieces and more stuff and make this thing its complete, its own little character, or come along the perimeter here and give it a little glop right there, and maybe bring this little piece right here a little bit more. And what you're doing is you're just trying to set that second piece apart from that first one, because that's the way that would work in nature, right? You're never going to have them back to back. The S here and the S here, once again, just to kind of color code those, we just wouldn't mess with those, but these two S's are still the same. So let's do it again. So go and damage the second S a little bit, and just grab your little white plus arrow and grab those shapes and just bring them around. If you want to dupe a couple, just to get some extra little bit of scriz in there. Now, when we go back and we look, those are two different S's pretty much. This little piece bothers me right there, so maybe just a quick little, push this one up a little bit. I don't know. You see what I'm saying, though? It's kind of case by case. If we take it one step further, and now we bring these things out here, just give it a couple little kicks of randomness, right? Those L's are never going to stack up perfectly like that. One goes a little high, one goes a little low. Maybe the kerning gets screwed up on one. But see, that's starting to feel pretty crusty in a cool little way. You've just protected it from the default. Be careful with script typefaces or crusty, grungy typefaces and these things that go back to back. B-O-O-K in book. You can't have those two O's line up. They have to be two different O's, right? So that's an extra step you got to take, and that's what we expect of you. So you're looking here at this document, right? But remember that black box there? That was going to be my face, and we're going to get a little halftone photo in there. So what we want to do here is we need to go build an image to plop into there. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to go into Photoshop and I'm going to get a picture of my face. There it is. Oh man, tricky. Just sitting here, just capital N narcissism. Just sitting here looking at pictures of my face all day. That's a fun class, huh? Sorry. Now here's what I want you to think about. To go make one of these goopy, crusty little dot halftones, here's kind of how I do it. Just follow along with me. I'm going to start with any photo for that matter. But there's a couple ways to do this thing. Because, if you let the computer make the halftone sometimes, it can just be a little predictable, we'll just say. So the first things first, let's just try doing it where we just go and we convert this thing to grayscale real quick. Okay, there it is to grayscale. And now let's just go, this is real fast, right? Into bitmap. And you're gonna get a feel of what this thing looks like. Right now it's at 300 DPI. And we're gonna go a 50% threshold. Let's see, let's go down to a halftone screen. The frequency, you can kind of adjust this stuff. I always stay at the 45. That's your kind of classic angle. But right now we're going to keep it at 30 degrees and the shape is going to be round. So here it goes. So see what happened there? So there is this little, if you zoom in there, you can see those little dots. But see, this freaks me out because it's just a little, now it looks good if we go to like right here. It looks good right there. But if we get into this thing, it's feeling a little light. So just kind of go and Command Z your way back. Let's try it again, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a feel for how big and crusty that dot could be. So we're going to bitmap this thing. We're going to go at 300, halftone screen. Now we're going to come down, we're going to mess with the frequency. Let's just make the frequency 10. So that's going to be 10 lines per inch. 45 degrees, round, hit it. And you can see what happened there. Now, if we zoom out down to like, the size of a postage stamp, you can see me, right? But if you zoom back in, you can see here that like, there's like some scriz and some stuff here. So the first things first, what you want to do is give it just a little bit of extra canvas size. So let's go 6 by 6. So watch what I'm going to do. Once again, I'm going to put it back to a grayscale from a bitmap. So now we're at a grayscale. Command J, I'm going to lift it up above. I'm going to blur this thing out. Blur, Gaussian blur. And maybe to like, I don't know, 2 or 3 points or something. Because see what that's doing? Now if you bring up your Command L for the levels, bring your black point in, bring your white point up. Take a look what that's doing. When you zoom in on that now, you've lost that little bit of scriz and you zoom back out. Now you've got this Aaron Draplin head, to kind of work with. And it's kind of like low resolution. And that's what I like about these things. Because if I take this thing now back into that document, and the quickest way you could do that is you could just do a screen grab. We could save this thing as Aaron Head halftone bitmap. And then save it out as such. We're going to go from grayscale back down to the bitmap. It's going to flatten all the layers. There it is right there. So let's just go to a 50% threshold now because it's just binary, yes or no. It saves it as a bitmap. Let's go save it out as a little TIFF. And there it goes. LZW, I don't even know what that stands for, but it's got something to do with compression. Always use that because it just shaves a lot of data in its smaller file sizes. So when you're working with a bitmap image, always hit that LZW. Now we'll go back into our document and we're going to place that thing in there. So let's go place. Let's grab that little Aaron Head bitmap. And that thing comes in pretty big because we made it 5 by 5 or 6 by 6 inches, whatever that was. But now if I go jam this thing down into this little space, you can see how I just added that photo there, and then we can go and kind of tweak it a little bit. And remember, you've got all this stuff at your fingertips to make these quick decisions. Because if I look at that thing and I say, everything else is pretty thick and beefy, I want that thing to be as thick and as beefy. So watch what I'm going to go do now. I'm going to go back to my original shot. I'm going to keep this other one open here just to kind of see what we're doing. Now, this little line right here, it's cool, but watch what you have to do. If you bring this thing down to half the size now, let's go 2.5 inches. Okay, grayscale. And now we're going to use the exact same stuff we were at before. So we're going to go to bitmap, 300 pixels per inch, 50% threshold, and you have to go down to that halftone screen. And now tell it to be the 10 inches. Now watch what's going to happen. Round, of course, 45-degree angle. It's going to get these big, big knobby pieces. But what's going to happen is look over here on the corners. See how it's cutting that little piece off right there where it's a half circle? You don't necessarily want that. So what you want to do is before you go do that, let's check ourselves. Let's go out here and let's make everything just a little bit more gray. Go Command L, go to your output levels, and just bring up the little white thing so you're just adding more data to the entire, you're graying out the entire photo. Now let's go add a pure white background. Let's go to 3 inches by 3 inches, a little bit of extra border. Okay, now let's go through and let's go to that bitmap, 300 halftone screen, and let's go 10 inches, and then there's the round, hit it, and see what that did? It made these nice dots, but of course when we zoom in, those things are a little crusty. Let's go back from the bitmap back to the grayscale. I mean, frankly, there might be better ways to do this, but this is just how I know how to do it. So that's how we're doing it. Let's go to the Gaussian blur now. Blur it out a little bit, 3 pixels. Bring up your white point, bring down your black point, and you're getting just this kind of creepy, but watch what happens when I zoom out. There I am. But see, if we go bring that, let's go save this thing again now. We're going to save this as a TIFF. We'll go find the other one. We'll call this one Aaron Head Halftone Bitmap number 2. LZW. Make sure it's a bitmap TIFF. There it is. So now let's go just check what we just built there. There's the second one. And see, I mean, it's subtle. You can see it now. But we're just kind of like matching the crustiness of the rest of the document. I mean, even that, the fact that it just starts to even, you start to lose my face, I kind of like that. But that's how you make a halftone, just that quick. And remember, there's tons of ways to make these little things. Let's just go do one more and I'll show you how this just gets really awesome. So we'll go back to my Aaron Head. Here I am looking at myself yet again. But watch this one. We're going to go to grayscale. We're going to come down here to make it a bitmap. We're going to go down here to 50% threshold. Now check it out. If you go 50% threshold, it's just going to say yes or no, like white or black, binary. So watch what it does. 50% threshold, hit it, and see what that did to it just that quick. But that's pretty cool. But if you go back a couple steps and you go into your bitmap, now check this one out. Go down here into halftone screen. Okay, now instead of doing the round one, do the lines at, let's say, 45 degrees. Now watch this. See those lines that it just made? And then when you blur that thing out, give it a little bit of extra space around it. Let's go up to 6. Back up to grayscale. Blur it out. And then bring up Command L to your levels. Bring up the black and bring up the white. And you can start getting weird with this stuff, right? And creating, it'd be a cool album cover or something. But in the end, when you zoom out of that a little bit, you can still see it, right? You can still see it. And that's what you have at your fingertips inside that whole bitmap making capability with the halftones and the lines and the shapes. You can do little diamonds and stuff. But that's how you make a halftone, right? And remember, when you go look at these old Popular Mechanics, all that stuff was done that way with a really fine grain. So if you're doing photos, you have to really watch the grain. If you're doing a crappy little portrait of me that's been sort of reproduced over and over and over and over on itself, it might start to lose itself after a while. And there's a charm to that. Like, I like the way that stuff looks, right? So learn how to use that halftone in a vicious way. So have fun with that, get weird, and make it dirty. What I want to do is I want to get even weirder. And I'm all tethered in right now, and I want to disconnect from this stuff. I'm going to use my iPhone. I'm going to go grab a little bit of footage where I print my screen out of my toner printer. We take that print, we run it to the cement, we grind that thing around to kind of skrizz up some logos and stuff. And then the second part might be where we actually just kind of crumple it all up and trash the print that way. The third part would be where you take your toner print, a piece of tracing paper, you get a big window, and you tape it all up, and you're looking out the window. That becomes like a big light box, right? And what you can do is you can quickly, using a crusty old Sharpie, just sort of retrace the face. You scan that stuff in, then you bring that into your documents. All right, I'm gonna go get some footage. I'm gonna start that now, and we're gonna start with a couple prints out of my machine. Okay, so I'm back at the machine now, and I've got some crusty little stuff to work with. So what you can see here is that little logo page that I printed out. And as we get into this thing, some of these things have been really damaged. So, this is a photo taken with my iPhone. So I'm going to get this thing down to a grayscale. I'm going to bring the levels up, and I'm just going to see where that thing kind of goes to, right? So now, some of these are really damaged. But the idea is if you go grab one of these things now, so I'm going to start a new document with this top left logo here. And you can just kind of see, the kind of damage that was done by rubbing it around in the cement, right? So get the thing sort of straight, or you can even leave it crusty just like where it's at. But what I want to do is I want to drag this thing out of here so I can go play with it inside my Illustrator. So to process this thing, let's just go quickly blur it for a second. And we'll just go to 3 pixels. Cool. I'm going to bring up my white point and bring down that black point until you get it to where it just feels kind of damaged in the right way. You got to make sure you can still see the DDC, but see right about there is feeling pretty good, right? Okay, so now I'm going to make this thing a little bitmap. This is a quick way to get it to high contrast, flatten the layers, and we're going to go 300 DPI, 50% threshold. And see what that just did right there? That just made a little bitmap TIFF. But if you bring it back to the grayscale now, see, now you bring this thing back, and I'm just going to go grab this as a vector now. So what you want to do is you want to, using color range, you want to select the black value where you get the marching ants and bring it all the way up, the fuzziness. Now that you've got this thing selected with the marching ants, and you want to go down to the little circular guy with the squares around it, and that's make a work path. You make the work path. You can see how that thing lights it up into a vector piece. Now you grab your black arrow, path selection tool, Command C, go back into your original document, and then bring in your crusty little shape that you just made. So here it is. Now it comes in clear. You have to color it something, so color it black. And what I just did right there, quickly, is I took that logo from this clean DDC over to this crusty one. So we have a version of this thing, copied over here. Let's go bring this new one in, right? So you can see what we're doing here is we're sort of trying to control all the little pieces that we put in here. So here is that little DDC. Now that doesn't necessarily match the rest of the document, but we'll get there. And now I'm going to go in to where I was crumpling everything up and just look for a couple pieces to play with. So I'm going to go into that crumpled up piece here, and let's see here. Maybe it's just this little getting dirty with the DDC for now. Or how about this? Let's bring in this whole chunk right here. So I'm going to bring this over to a grayscale. I'm just going to crop it down. I'm going to bring up the levels pretty high. So we're just being, that stuff is just being left there. I'll bring the black mark down. And see, look at these cool little moments that are starting to happen here. This creepy little line, because that's where the paper is sort of like moving and it's being crumpled that way. I mean, this is getting really dirty. I'm just going to go through, I'm going to quickly blur this stuff out. Gaussian blur, just a little bit. I'm going to bring my Command L to the levels. I'm going to bring the white point up and that black point down. And what that just did there, that just made, we'll just grab this getting dirty with the DDC part right here, right? Because it's still got sort of a good axis. And we're going to grab that part. Now I'm going to crop this thing down. I'm going to go select it with my color range. I'm going to grab the black value. I'm going to get the little marching ants. I'm going to go into the paths. I'm going to make a work path. Now that thing is selected into a little vector. I'm going to grab my black arrow. I'm going to Command C, copy it, go back into Illustrator, and paste it in. It's going to come in as clear. You have to go and color it something, so we'll color it black. And now when I bring this thing down, this thing just has this little bit of crust to it. So see what I'm doing? I'm taking things that these sort of accidents that we forced and plopping them back in there. And what you're doing is you're just sort of like controlling each little piece. One of the things I did was I used the window as a light box. And you can see here the image that I came up with. Now there's my face. I'm going to crop this thing down to a simple square. I'm going to go to a grayscale. And now bring up the white point, bring down the black point, and I just made this like crusty little image of myself. And now if you take this thing and you blur it out pretty far, so let's just blur it out like up to about, let's say 10 pixels. And now Command L to your levels, bring in your black point and bring in your white point, and it starts to look like almost like a really crappy like photocopy or something, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to get here. It's looking a little evil, but I kind of like it, right? Now I'm just going to go quickly through and do my little bitmap trick where I just reduce it down to bitmap, yes or no, binary, 300, right? There it is. Here's this little piece. I'm going to go back now to my grayscale. Select color range, grab the black value, get the marching ants, make a work path, grab your black arrow, Command C, bring it back into Illustrator, Command V, you get this big face, you got to color it something, there it is. And you can work with the fidelity of this thing, but just take a look up above here. What you're seeing in a cool way is you're seeing how I went from photo to halftone to even this kind of creepy, evil little sort of trolley looking little thing here, but in some pretty quick little steps. But what I'm trying to show you is by getting off the machine and taking that print and damaging it, you can create some awesome effects. There's lots of ways to get weird with these things, but you have to get off the computer to do that, right? You know these analog techniques, you can get there super quick, super fast, just with your iPhone and a little bit of grit and determination and a little bit of cement. So we've done a bunch of Crusty techniques and we've made a bunch of assets. So what I want to do now is I want to mix all those assets into sort of a widescreen format, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to damage that entire thing using all those different assets. We're going to damage that into one sort of flattened, damaged graphic. And then we're going to bring that into Photoshop and we're going to add a little bit of paper texture and then start adding a little bit of color, right? And messing with these sort of like goopy traps and weird things that happen in the printing process to kind of fake all that stuff. What I want to do here is I want to go and start to assemble all these things into one kind of document. There's that one piece. There's the little damaged logo you can see there. And I'm going to put them all into one little thing here, and then we're going to kind of go trash everything real fast. So, okay, I'm going to put my little halftone head in there. Remember, like anything, don't worry about having this stuff lined up too much, right? Kind of the dirtier the better. And loose, like just be loose with it. Just place it in there and keep moving. All right, so now I've got all these, at least these couple pieces in there. And the little face, well, we'll use that somewhere else. But I want you to grab this whole piece now, Command C, and we're gonna go over here into Photoshop and start a new document. And paste it in there as a smart object. And now we're gonna go do our little patented technique thing, remember? So we're gonna go here, Skriz technique we'll call it. We're gonna grayscale it out, don't flatten it, don't rasterize it. We're gonna check how big this thing is. Right now, we're gonna put it up to 666, something nice and evil. And then we're gonna add a little bit of space outside of it. I'm gonna expand my canvas size with Option Command C. And I'm just gonna go up to 9 and then go up to 5. That just gives it a little bit of breathing room, right? So quickly, grab those two layers, Command J to lift them up above, Command E to flatten them, and let's just go give it a quick little bit of tooth, right? So let's go down here to add a little bit of noise, and let's get weird with it, right? So we're gonna add some noise, and we're gonna blur that out a little bit. Just go a couple pixels. We're going to go Command L to your levels. We're going to bring the white point up. We're going to bring the black point down, 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 down. And then watch that grain as it starts to go away. Maybe keep a little bit of it. So now we've got that part, and we're getting dirty, we're getting weird, and we're starting to lose things, but it's starting to feel the right sprinkle of kind of crusty, right? Now, go into your filter gallery, into your stamp, and then what you're left with here is this kind of crusty reproduction, right? Smooth it out just a little bit. Some of those dots might be a little harsh. All right, that's looking good right there. So always check your light-dark balance and your smoothness. And now what you've got is you've got this sort of damaged, sort of top layer. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna add some paper texture and a little bit of color to this thing, simulating ink, right? So let me save this thing, and we'll call this Skillshare 7 Content Color. Okay, for now, go back to CMYK. Don't flatten it. Don't rasterize it. Now, I had prepped a piece of paper. So open your piece of paper. And by the way, there's all sorts of places to get paper techniques. You can get them online. You can get them in all these sorts of like, stock images and stuff. Or even the best, you can just go find a piece and scan it in or take a photo of it with your iPhone and get it onto your machine by airdropping it or whatever you want to call. I've built my assets up over the years. Every time I would get some old magazine that had a blank page, I would scan that page in, put it into my little, Skrizzy paper folder for, with other textures, right? So, build that archive for yourself. So here comes this piece right now. So there's a old piece of paper. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to bring it into this thing and put it behind everything else. It's a little small, but don't worry about that. We're just simulating right now. Bring this thing in here and get it behind, dirtier the better. Get it behind that image. And then what you want to do is you want to go through now and you want to multiply that top image over it, right? Now check it out. Let's go add a splash of color to this real quick. We're going to call it kind of playing the traps, because when they used to trap the stuff and they would have these weird little, sort of like, where they were trying to fake how edges came together and stuff, and things would shift in the printing process and you would get these weird traps of ink that would sort of just look kind of crappy and kind of just right. We're going to try to simulate that now. So the way we're going to do this thing is we're going to start a new layer. We'll get a color here. Let's just go with red for now. And we're just going to go make some boxes. So I'm just going to quickly go and just make some colors that just kind of land over some of these things. So we're just filling these things real fast here. I can go put a big piece of color up over my halftone, we'll just say. If you want, you can put it underneath so you see what you're messing with. I'm going to put a big red bar over the Crusty techniques. That's down below. You can see what we're working with by bringing it up above that black layer, right? So that you can just see here where that's kind of affecting the logo up above. But remember, dirtier the better, right? Dirtier the better. Now, if you want to change some of the type here, what you could go do is something like this. You could go and grab all of that type in a quick way like this. Just go select, color range, grab the black value. And now make another layer and then color that red. Okay, and now check what you've got here. And all we want is we just want to grab some of this. You're just going to subtract some of this out of here. So let's just go and grab, get your selections. We'll grab some of these fun numbers and we'll grab, let's see here. We're just going to add a little splash of red type. The DDC down below. Maybe it's the and other stuff here. So then Shift Command I to inverse it and get rid of everything else. And what you've done right there is now you can combine that with layer 2 and layer 3 here, Command E, and you've got this sort of red layer now. Now what that means is you're going to have to go and get rid of the stuff that it's kind of replacing, right? So the way to do that is just by command clicking that red layer, going down to the layer below it, and then getting rid of those elements, right? So you can just use your erase tool and kind of go piece by piece. So, and remember, quicker the better, because all you're doing is you're getting rid of the black down below it now. So check it out. Like, what's cool about this now is if you go to that top layer there, which is the black, well, let's say the black ink, right? And if you make that at about 90%, 85%, we'll say, just so you can see on the screen here, 75% opacity. So you see that now? Well, now what that means is, let's just say the black ink hit a certain way, and then the red ink is down below. And check it out. Now what you can do is you can sort of pretend that you're just subtracting from the red ink and go in there and delete a part and see that trap again. Now watch. That little red space below it there, let's go get crusty with that for a second. So we're going to select that part and we're just going to bring it out a little bit bigger so it just sort of leaves that sort of safe space. And see, now that is feeling like something they would have done back in the day to give that thing a little splash of red. So what you're doing here is you're adding this kind of weird kind of printing technique, human touch to it, and you're affecting the colors. And now just to go real quick, I'll show you this once again. Make a couple versions of it by hitting Command J of those layers. Let's go add a couple weird colors to this thing to see how far this can kind of go. So what we're going to go do is we're going to turn everything off. So we just want that black value there. So we're going to say color range. We're going to select that black value. And everything, you got the marching ants now. We're going to make a new layer up above. And let's go pick a green or something. So we'll pick a nice green, a nice deep green. There you go. Now go below it and grab that red. So you can make another version of that layer and then just tone that red, let's just say to a kind of a lighter green. There it is, okay? And now you can take that piece of paper and bring it up under there. and make that kind of a greenish color using your hue saturation. So there you go. And now multiply these things appropriately. And that one multiplies over the green down below, over the paper. And you're starting to get this kind of quality where you can sort of, you can change the color of your entire piece. Because think of it like inks. If you were to make this as a 2-color business card or a poster or just graphic for this video, right now we've got a dark green ink, a light green ink on a light green paper. It's as simple as that. All the way up to this point, we have controlled all the elements. We built the piece, we scrizzed them out appropriately, we went off the camera and we dirtied some things up. You can handle a photo by making it a halftone, or you can go and make a whole new illustration out of it. However you want to do that. When you assemble them all back into one piece, the magic starts to happen. And really what this is you're simulating printing techniques on your screen, right? Using all these Crusty techniques. And this is how they can kind of turn out. All right, you guys, another class, our 7th, coming to an end. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for taking this class, for taking all these classes and, all these years. But today we got dirty, right? And let that be an arrow in your quiver, right? Another little fold and flap that you know about. If it's appropriate for your design and you want to go really damaged and really dirty like I was doing before and looking like these old magazines and stuff, that's one extreme element. But what's important is that, let's just say you aren't the big, animal that I am, right? And you want to use a 1/5 of that. That might be the perfect little sprinkle to your floral design or anything for that matter. Apply this stuff to your work, get weird with it, or get just a little bit weird. The main thing is that you know how to, get a little dirty. So thank you for listening and take care. And hey, I want to see your work. So be sure to post it on the Skillshare project gallery, because listen, I go in there and get weird and leave comments and, offer little tips and tricks and things. It's cool to share and show your stuff, see how other people are doing things and learning things. And that's the place to do it. Okay. So I'm being told I got to wrap this thing up. Thank you for coming to the DDC and getting all the merch and buying field notes and buying the book and buying the blankets and the knives and the things and the stuff and listening to the podcast and just all the things that we are so lucky to touch. Thank you for checking that stuff out. You guys take care. We'll see you later. Wait. You can't, don't start the credits just yet. Art Chantry, thank you so much for all these years of incredible graphic design and inspiring me 30 years ago, all the way up here to 2021 with your crusty techniques and your wit and your humor and your craft and your incredible eye for type. Art Chantry, thank you for being a part of this video and for inspiring a generation of kids to get weird, off the screen. Thanks, Art. Now you can roll the credits.